There's 2 more left.
Max kicking the car, famous photo, remember this one? This was after Singapore qualifying, I believe, when he put it in the wall.
How'd you get that?
When he was doing the lap of his life.
Jesus Christ. You ain't a DTS fan.
And to think they call themselves an F1 podcast. Heading into the 2021 season, Lightning McQueen, now we're not doing this again, Lewis Hamilton has become a 7-time champion of the world. He has equaled Michael Schumacher, and if he is not already considered the GOAT, then surely an 8th championship would all but seal the deal. And who can stop him? Mercedes have just built the fastest car of all time, and even though new regs were supposed to come in this year, thanks to a thing in the air, they got pushed for 2022. So Mercedes keep their fastest car ever? Well, not exactly. See, there were still some minor changes for 2021 still, along with the promised budget cap hitting for this year. But come on, some little thingy-mabobs on the side of the car getting shaved off and other minuscule changes, Mercedes would still dominate, because why wouldn't they? They have done so since 2014. Sure, maybe the budget cap can bring teams like Ferrari and Red Bull back close, but with Ferrari being banished to purgatory and Red Bull being led by Horner, it'll still be Mercedes on top. But heading into preseason testing, oh my goodness, Ferrari looked better, but also still midfield, so not really. But Red Bull looked kind of fast, and in fact, not kinda, they are fast, especially in the hands of Max Verstappen. What about Mercedes then? Are they slightly behind, if not tied? Well, they are actually looking pretty slow right now, slow enough to where people are even doubting they are second fastest. And even aside from pace, Mercedes are having their issues with reliability and stability, and hold on, are we back? And I'll tell you, the feeling of preseason 2021 was unlike any. That is what it must have felt like in 1945 when the Nazis were defeated. The feeling of hope and opportunity in the air, I will never forget it. And this is coming from a guy who notoriously hates Red Bull and Max, as my audience loves to remind me. But there is a slight disclaimer. This is not the first time we have thought Mercedes to be slower than they actually are. Let us remember years like 2019 where we really believed that Ferrari were the team to beat, so they for sure love their sandbags. Nothing is definite quite yet. However, the prospects of a Max Verstappen young hotshot future of the sport being in a title fight with Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest to have ever done it, if not the greatest, was pretty dang apparent. Anyways, heading into round 1, what would it be? Max running away with victory or a surprise Lewis Hamilton performance? Can you guess? Now, it wasn't as slam dunk as I'm making it seem. And qualifying for Bahrain, Mercedes were certainly quicker than what preseason showed, since they lined up 2nd and 3rd with Lewis and Valtteri respectively. However, on pole was of course Max, who despite the Mercedes buff, still looks untouchable this weekend as he has set P1 in every session so far. So as the race begins, he should pull away and dominate, right? Nope. Round 1 really was a teaser for the entire year, since almost immediately, the pair of Max and Lewis just dart off in the distance, while 3rd place is too far back to even be a cuck in the battle. Max and Lewis were exchanging fastest laps and sending empty threads to the point where you knew things would boil over soon. And as the final stint is underway, Max is ready to send his proper challenge on Lewis, who got ahead at the stops, and they are fighting well until Max pulls off the overtake and is now leading to win round 1. Woohoo! But uh-oh, let us introduce the 3rd guy in this championship fight this year, someone people have either forgotten or will never forget. Michael Masi. He wasn't a driver, he was the race director, and what an infamous fella he was. So when Max overtook Lewis, Max overstepped on the white line, making his overtake invalid as it occurred off track, and rightfully so. Okay then, so what's the issue? Lewis Hamilton went off track 28 times, and if the line Max took was considered faster and illegal, Masi would be infamous not because of his decisions. The FIA always makes controversial decisions. Rather, he would be infamous for his lack of clarity and inconsistent ruling, which I guess is also typical of the FIA. But Masi would be the epitome of these things. Anyways, Max had to give the place back or suffer a 5-second penalty, and once he did, those tires were cooked, which led to Lewis Hamilton holding on for the race win. Classic Mercedes sandbags. But who was complaining? Max Verstappen has waited years years for his chance to win. He has been honing his driving since 2016 for this opportunity, but to take his first ring, he must beat the best to have ever done it, Lewis Hamilton. Nearing 100 victories, 7 world championships, dominated great drivers alike, Lewis is simply him. So who will win? The greatest driver of today or the greatest driver of the future? Well, round 2 in Imola, after a whole month break for some reason, would once again be a banger since both Red Bull and Mercedes looked neck and neck, and when it came for qualifying, the end result was of course Lewis next to a Red Bull. Something's off, isn't it? That Red Bull wouldn't be Max. He was in third, while Checo Perez, the actual GOAT of F1, would be in second, ahead of Max in his second weekend for the team. You could imagine how I felt that day, but Sunday will bring me back down to earth since Max on the race start got an almighty launch off the line and was able to get alongside Lewis approaching turn 1, where of course, the first of many incidents occurred. Now this wouldn't be a penalty, and rightfully so I'd say, since that was as on edge as it could get and delivered us some good drama. Sure hope no one gets a drama boner as the year progresses. So anyways, the race immediately stops thanks to the 2 best drivers of all time, Nicholas Latifi and Nikita Mazepin crashing, and shortly after, race is back underway, and for a while, we're just chilling. That is about until lap 30, where after pitting to the drives, Lewis is on the hunt for Max, and while overtaking some back markers, gets off the dry line and goes off track into the barriers, but just keeps the car in the race, thankfully. And something that helped Lewis not lose as many places was George Russell attempting to murder Valtteri for not getting out the team yet. This brought out a red flag, and Lewis was only relegated down to 8th in the end of it. So for the remainder of the race, Lewis fights his way back up front, but has to settle for second as Max is able to bring it home for the win. Oh boy, thank God we have some boring races to run through since these first 2 rounds, my God. Round 3 in Portugal saw Red Bull not within Mercedes, interestingly enough, which led to Lewis winning comfortably for Max in second, and while round 4 would feature Max being more of a nuisance to Lewis, even doing a very bold overtake at turn 1 lap 1 that I love, Mercedes strategy mogged Red Bull for the win in the end of it. By this point, I remember people saying that Mercedes had a little fun in rounds 1 and 2, but now we're back to their dominant selves, and the title fight we had dreamed of happening was not real in the end. But just you wait, sunshine. Round 5 in Monaco was another boring one, but Max would win that round since Red Bull were pretty great as they usually are around Monte Carlo, while Mercedes, ooh boy, Lewis Hamilton was just not good at all since he qualified and finished in 7th with 2 DNFs ahead, mind you, and one of them was Charles Leclerc, who couldn't even start the damn thing from pole. And who would that other one be? Valtteri Bottas, who in all the ways to get out of a race, a tire not coming out during a pit stop. Really, Mercedes? Really? So Max took a giant 18-point chunk out of Lewis, which was enough to lead the standings for the first time in his career. So now we approach Baku for round 6, and something about this damn race is things get all sorts of fucked up here, and 2021 did not disappoint since, my goodness me, qualifying saw Lewis Hamilton get pulled from Max with about a 10th separating them. Wait, why are there only 9 drivers in Q1? Oops, my bad, I forgot one driver. It was Charles Leclerc who got pulled by more than 2/10. That is his second pull in a row now, and it's such a shame that his car wasn't much faster in the race since I wonder how he could have played in this season, which, oh yeah, he got passed by both Lewis and Max before lap 10 even arrived, so awkward. Someone who was keeping up with the leading pair though was Max's teammate Checo, who was providing some good backup to him, and after the first stop saw Lewis get held up by Gasly, Checo was able to jump ahead of Lewis for a Red Bull 1-2, and the race would stay like this for a while until Lance Stroll crashed out of the race, not through his own fault for once, but because he suffered a rear tire puncture. I'm sure that's nothing to worry about, but with 5 laps to go, the race and title potentially swings wide open. Max crashes out of the race in a freak accident thanks to a tire puncture, and that is where this infamous picture is taken. Not in Singapore, which wasn't even on the calendar by the way, with an AI generated photo, other podcasts. Checo assumes race lead as we head into the red flag, and Lewis Hamilton knows his objective. He tells his team and Toto this is a marathon, not a sprint, signifying that he isn't going to be aggressive as 18 whole points over Max is still very large to take. So the red flag lifts, and as the lights go out, Oh man, the vibes that day were hilarious. Checo won that race in the end from Vettel in the Aston in second and Gasly in third for RB, then AlphaTauri. I still dream of this day. Anyways, round 7 was back to business as qualifying in France saw Max on pole with Lewis alongside, and this race was actually a banger. The Paul Ricard circuit has a legacy in the sport, and it ain't a good one. This track is awful, but 2021 saw the cars fighting for once. Both drivers from Mercedes and Red Bull were fighting all the way to the end, or Red Bull for one strategy mogged Mercedes, as in the dying laps, Checo overtook Valtteri for third, and Max overtook Lewis for first. By this point, Mercedes and Lewis were starting to sweat a bit since Max was looking so matured and fast in his driving, and as we head into Austria for 2 whole rounds at a track Lewis and Mercedes struggle at as well, it's maybe looking rough for Lewis, which of course it was, since for both the Styrian and Austrian Grand Prix, Max dominantly won those races with zero competition, and while Lewis was able to get second for the Styrian round, he got fourth for the Austrian Grand Prix, and now he was behind Max by a massive 32-point gap. Lewis is going to need some miracle should he come back so soon, but luckily the next round is in Silverstone, Lewis's home turf. If he could come back with an iron fist, here is the place to do so. This weekend was also F1's first ever sprint race, and back then, your sprint finish decided your starting placement for the main race. So qualifying for the sprint race saw Lewis take pole from Max by about a tenth, and with the two neck and neck in pace all weekend long, how will the sprint go? Oh man, I might need to take a smoke. Immediately, the two are fighting like the fate of the universe is at hand. It's a miracle these two have not crashed yet. By the end of the race, Max in the end took home the win, or I guess pole, with Lewis in second, and Lewis, he had to get his lick back. So for the main race, here we go. Lights out, and the two are side by side through nearly every corner. Exiting Woodcut, Lewis has a run on Max. He pulls out to the side of Max, and entering Copse, you know the rest, I think. Max took a heavy 50G crash and of course was out of the race, with Lewis not leading it. Charles Leclerc and the carnage and chaos assumed the race lead, and with his childhood rival out of the race, Charles attempts to carry his flag, and as the red flag lives, despite being in a significantly slower car, Charles fought like hell to keep his lead, and he was doing so brilliantly. However, classic Ferrari things would then commence. Charles reported his engine was cutting at some point and he was losing power, and this inspired Lewis to launch himself forward, and in the dying laps of the race, ironically at Copse, Lewis takes the lead from Charles and wins the race in front of his home crowd and taking 25 whole points out of Max's lead. Talk about dramatic. But why are you breathing easy now? We have Hungary next up, people. On race start, which is mighty wet, chaos. Valtteri gets a dog-awful start with Lando ahead of him even, and instead of being cautious on a wet start, at a downhill braking zone at that with minimal visibility, Valtteri says fuck it and plows into Norris, who plows into Max, while Valtteri plows into Checo, and in the avoiding action, Stroll plows into Charles, who plows into Ricciardo, and somehow, Lewis gets off scot-free with Ocon of all people in second and Vettel in third. Red flag is out to clean up the mess, and by the time it lifts, it's dry as hell. So the entire field on formation lap pit off of Inter, since it would be stupid enough to look at this dry-ass track and still be on Inter tires. Lewis would. Lewis absolutely would. He would be the only one, in fact, which gave us this very funny picture. Coming out of the pits, Russell would be in second after his genius trick of simply cutting everyone in front of you in the line worked for about 1 minute as Massey ordered his death. So Ocon is now leading from Sebastian Vettel, while Lewis Hamilton is now in dead last with a sizable gap to the car ahead. The whole entire race saw Ocon defend from Vettel while Lewis climbed his way up, all the way to 5th in fact, where the next car on the road was Alonso, Ocon's teammate. With about 20 laps to go, it seemed Lewis would just blitz past Fernando as he had every driver before, and then eventually win the race. But no, Fernando remembered who he was, probably because Lewis was the driver he was fighting, and gave us such a delicious battle. Every challenge Lewis sent was defended mightily by Fernando, also his teammate can win, and in the end, Lewis eventually got past, but the laps had run out and he had to settle for 4th as Ocon won the entire thing in the end. But back to the title fight. Max finished with a severely damaged car in 9th while Lewis got 3rd. Lewis in 2 rounds went from some 30 points back on Max to now leading by a couple of points, just in time for the summer break. So let's assess. My God, Lewis and Max all year long so far have been delivering us the best driving we have seen in years, and with recent rounds getting spicy, I wonder how this will affect their driving. Mercedes and Red Bull have been neck and neck on pace in every round so far, and even though it's only halfway done, if any team were to drop pace right now, it could be detrimental to their title efforts. So as we're back for Spa for super duper wet qualifying, it will see Max Verstappen taking pole from George Russell with Lewis in third. Oh, wait a minute. George Russell and the Williams, he is in third? Bro, I cannot take this anymore. And for the race, Lewis immediately overtakes George, and Lewis and Max are fighting all the way until the end, where after nearly crashing lap after lap after lap and being 50 seconds ahead of third collectively, they stop. They realize their mistakes and how much they have demonized themselves just for what? A plastic trophy? Both realizing this, they slow down, much to the commentator's shock. They get out of their cars, remove their helmets, and give each other a big hug with tears in their eyes, apologizing for the ruthlessness of this year. A red flag has been thrown out as the world watches these two embrace each other before they look into each other's eyes and kiss passionately before Godzilla being ridden by Max Mosley comes out of nowhere and fucking destroys the track and the world. Oh wait, this was my dream. Yeah, there was no race that day as the rain kept on pouring and pouring and pouring. So the race was canceled and half points were rewarded, which also meant that George got a podium in a Williams. Wow. But now for a real weekend again. Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix, Max's home turf now. The standings look like this. Lewis holds a 3-point lead over Max, and if Max is going to turn the season around, just as Lewis has, what a better place to do it than your own home race. The Netherlands' first race in decades at that. So how was the race? It would be kind of boring. Now we are reaching the point of the season where Max and Lewis unlock their sixth sense. These two are starting to be separated by like 5 seconds at most, while their competition in third is so far back. They may as well be in Formula 2. This race was just that, by the way, because before Lewis split for the fastest lap, which gave 1 point back then, they were separated by 3 seconds while being ahead of Valtteri in third by a whopping 50 whole seconds. It was a statement to the rest of the Formula 1 grid, and man, take me back to these days. Anyways, Max is now leading the standings once more, so Monza time for yet another sprint race weekend. Woo, this one was boring. Valtteri got pole, won the sprint race, got an engine penalty, so Max started from first from Lewis. Wait a minute, from Danny Rick in the McLaren? Yeah, McLaren had to have sniffed the best Coke on the planet since this weekend they were so bloody good. Lewis is down in fourth, but he knows how to maximize his results, so for the race, Danny Rick immediately takes a lead from Max while Lewis gets ahead of Lando before Lando gets the place back. McLaren now are being a real nuisance for the leading pair, but hopefully the stops can remove them. So Red Bull stopped Max, who, has a terribly slow stop as New Gear, courtesy of Michael Massey, has turned the Red Bull crew from the best pit stop crew to less good now. But their problems are alleviated thanks to Lewis also having a slow stop, and as he comes out, who's that next to him? The one and only Max Verstappen. Both drivers not wanting to let up an inch, absolutely send it into turn one, where I'm sure you could guess what happened. Another crash, this time seeing them both out, which only leads to McLaren 1-2. And this momentum is not stopping since for Russia, after another wet qualifying, Lando gets on pole with Max down the order with a grid penalty for Monza, along with an engine penalty, and Lewis only in fourth because I don't know, actually, why is he down there? So as the race begins, Sainz and Lando fight for the lead for a while before Lando takes hold of it, and the race is just calm. Lando is leading, Lewis is not really doing much, and Max has recovered well, although is only in seventh. Whatever, man, let's just move on. What's that? Rain, and not just any rain, heavy rain in the last 5-ish laps. At first, it's bearable, but it quickly becomes bad, and Max comes into the pits for inters. Lewis in second is benefiting in these conditions, but it's too much even for him, and pits with like 3 laps to go. 20 seconds and 3 laps, Lando thinks to himself he could keep it on track and win for the first time surely in his career, but the rain is too heavy. He goes off while Lewis was only a couple seconds back at that point, and the race ends with Lewis taking his 100th win with Max in second. Bro, after all of that, we still get Lewis and Max 1-2. Lewis is again leading the standings after this one, and the gap is staying oh so close with only a handful of races to go. The next race in Turkey would be another wet one, and Lewis would have a struggle here while Red Bull couldn't answer the pace of Valtteri, but still allowed Max to get ahead of Lewis once more. So now for Coda, and this race signifies something. the season is ending soon. After the races in the Americas, we go to the Middle East where of course Abu Dhabi rounds the year off. The gap is 6 points with Max ahead. It's still anyone's game, but a mistake now would surely cost the season. Game on. Coda sees Red Bull ahead by a lot initially, but Lewis does what he does and by the end of the race pushes Max all the way to the line, who narrowly wins over Lewis, increasing his lead over Lewis to 12 points. And then in Mexico, Mercedes had no response to Red Bull's pace as they comfortably won that one with Max once more, increasing his gap over Lewis to 19 points. These two are now in their element. 1-2 in every round, every point matters. And Brazil, ooh boy, will this tension finally break. Sao Paulo was the host for the final sprint round of the year, and in qualifying, Lewis dominantly took pole. But he was disqualified for his DRS wing being a pubes hair too big, and he was sent to the back for it. With only some 20 laps to make up positions for the race, this seems like a slam dunk victory for Max, no? Well, Lewis in the misery took an engine penalty, because why not? So, with the new engine, what can he really do? Magic. From P20 and dead last, Lewis finished in 5th, making up 15 positions in 24 laps. And with Lewis now serving a 5-place grid job for the engine, Lewis starts in P10 for the main race with a grudge. And by lap 19, he's already in 2nd, sniffing Max's lead. And in no time, he is starting to send challenges after the stops. And in lap 48, this iconic moment occurs where Max fully misses his braking on purpose just to stop Lewis from taking the lead. A wasteful effort it was, as Lewis still breezes past Max eventually and wins by over 10 seconds to him, bringing the lead in the standings down to 14 points. Qatar was also uncontested as Lewis dominantly won that race too over Max, who did well to stay in 2nd and close enough to Lewis. The lead is now down to 8, and heading into the penultimate round of the year in Saudi Arabia, Max is maybe getting a little desperate. Lewis had not been in reach of him since Mexico. At this pace, he will win the title come Abu Dhabi. He must up the ante. So in qualifying, after a look set in stone that Lewis will be on pole, Max out of nowhere goes purple by whole 10ths in Sector 1, the same in Sector 2. This qualifying lap from him is the stuff of Senna. He even has Fernando Alonso stunned. And as he comes into the final corner before all that separates his car and the checkered flag is a straight, Max goes wide and hits the barrier, never completing one of the greatest laps surely to have ever been set. But that's just from the qualifying. As for the race, the race begins, and by lap 10, a safety car is deployed thanks to Mick Schumacher plowing it into the barriers. Under safety car, Mercedes double stack, because why not? Well, the safety car got upgraded to a red flag, which means Max in the lead takes a free stop and stays in the lead, with Mercedes now dropping position for no reason. Insert controversy with Michael Masi. So with the red flag lifted, lights out again, and Lewis launches well off the line to clear Max, but Max locks his tires and goes off, shoving Lewis out the way as he rejoins in the lead, with another crash happening behind that causes another red flag. Max is forced to restart in 3rd after Michael Masi literally bargained with Red Bull and Mercedes about how to penalize the incident, which resulted in Ocon, who got ahead of Hamilton in the melee, to still keep his P1. So as the race restarts again, Lewis sizes up Ocon for the overtake, but Max out of nowhere plows down the inside, nearly taking Lewis and Ocon out, but keeps his car within the white line. So he keeps a lead this time with Lewis, then shoving Ocon out the way shortly after, and here we go. Lewis sometime later sizes up Max for the overtake, and as he pulls out to do it, Max again releases the brake early, nearly crashing with Lewis and going off, but he keeps the P1. Masi, however, has had enough and tells Max and Red Bull to give the place to Lewis, as he did exit the corner with the bigger lead, and when Lewis sees it slowing Max, he inspects his little ass. Max, then getting flustered, brake checks Lewis, causing them to crash but not DNF, but still seeing Max in the lead. Max a couple laps later for real slows down to let Lewis pass, who does take the place this time, but Max then dive bombs Lewis to get the place back immediately, but as he does that, gets a 5-second penalty for something he did, man. I don't know which incident at this point. Lewis then gets past Max, so he shoves off the road, and Lewis wins the race with the fastest lap point after all of that, with Max in 2nd, which means heading into Abu Dhabi, they are equal on points. May the best driver win. Qualifying sees both Mercedes and Red Bull sacrifice their second driver for the main drivers by giving them a tow, and the winner in that fight was Max, since he took pole over Lewis by a staggering 3/10. but you wouldn't have guessed that in the race, since almost immediately, Lewis stoops Max off the line, and despite nearly crashing later, Lewis would know what to do. He is a 7-time world champion. I think he knows how to win these things, and Lewis would then dart off in the distance, leaving the world stunned. As the first stops approach, Lewis and Max pit with Checo staying out and being assigned one job: hold up Lewis to bring Max back into play, and boy did Checo pull that off brilliantly, since after some of the best defensive driving you will see, on old tires mind you, Max Verstappen was some 20 seconds behind Lewis, and now he is within 1. But that didn't matter. Nothing came of it, as Lewis just drove away again. Out the last 5 laps ticking away, Lewis is leading by 12 seconds and on track to become an 8-time world champion. After a season full of crazy and on-rails driving between two titan of drivers, is this how the season ends? In a boring fashion? But you know what happens. Nicholas Latifi, fighting in last place with Mick, crashed on lap 53, bringing out a safety car, and Lewis opted to not pit, fearing losing track position, while Max had no such risk, and knowing Lewis's risk, he pitted, but it seemed all for naught, since with 2 laps to go, lapped cars were still in the way and there just wasn't enough time to finish this race under green. But Michael Masi thought to himself, after everything this year, a safety car finish is how the year ends, thanks to a last place battle at that. He orders that the car specifically in between Lewis and Max unlap themselves, and the moment they clear away, the safety car is in, meaning we have 1 lap to decide the championship. You know, I'm surprised Masi hasn't had a drama aneurysm by now. With Max on fresh softs and Lewis on old hards, it was never a challenge. Max sends a Hail Mary of a move into the hairpin and overtakes Lewis, and despite nearly crashing again, he's done it. Max brings it home to become a world champion for the first time ever, cruelly denying Lewis's 8th. The best season of Formula 1, hands down. If you have never seen the season in full, please go do so by whatever means necessary. You will not regret it. So that was the 2021 video. Man, I'm sad now. Fuck that podcast. Anyways, I'm gonna give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for the continued support, and make sure to join if you all cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you like and subscribe, since it really helps me out, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.